Welcome, everyone. Our presentation is about embracing the next generation of miners in the critical mineral workforce. Before diving into the presentation, here is a roadmap of our presentation. We will start with critical minerals potential, and then we will talk about the 21st generation workforce divide, and then we will focus on workforce readiness, and we will finalize it by nurturing talent. Here is a map that is showing the critical minerals diversity and geographical distribution of critical minerals across the United States, from west coast to the east coast, including Alaska and Hawaii. Each symbol is showing one of the critical minerals, from rarest element to cobalt, lithium, and PGs. As you see, United States has a good geographic distribution of critical minerals. The pie charts on the left are showing the rarest element, the top countries, the top reserves of rarest element shifted from 2013 to 2022. As you see, in 2013, China had 50% of the reserves of rarest element in the world, and United States had 12%, which dropped to 34% for China, and other countries like Brazil, Vietnam, and Russia, they increased their portion, which is showing that the supply chain of critical minerals in the United States is vulnerable. The key challenges that critical minerals are facing are innovation and technology, geopolitics, health and safety, climate and environmental challenges, and demand increase, the demand is security, and the focus of this presentation, which is talent shortage. The 21st generation workforce is divided to 5 groups. The silent group, which are totally retired. If you are in that group and you're still working, great job, you're awesome. Boomers are in the late stage of consulting positions. Gen X are mostly phasing out of management positions, and Gen Y are the core of workforce. Gen Z are entering as trainees. In the United States, there are 14,300 miners that only 9.4% are women. This slide is giving you a picture of Gen Z's age ranges, which is, oh, sorry. It's just going. Okay, which ranges between 18 to 29 years old. And we would be happy if you had worked with Gen Zs to hear your experience, if you had worked with these ranges. Because these generation, they're born with technology, and if you know their differences and their challenges that they are facing with, that would be awesome. But talent shortage is not just about the numbers, it's about the perceptions, the lifestyle that Gen Z has, the progression, extinctions, and the cause. These generations have different social dynamics and influences. They are looking for work-life balances, and also they like to have a modernized careers, as well as at the same time they are worried about if AI is taking over their career. They have a fear of shifting out or phasing out with AI and those kind of artificial intelligence. And environmental and climate anxiety is the other challenge that needs to be met to solve about.
So now we're going to dive deeper into what we're talking about in terms of talent shortage. For this particular generation, you'd find out that they depend a lot on social media, and this chart here shows how much they depend on each type of social media platforms. If you plan to have an engagement with them, these are the ones that you should be going for. Also, we look at the social narrative. There's not really a good perception about mining, and it's not just a thing that's stuck with Gen Z. it's all of us, really. You could look at, in Hollywood movies, most of the movies that you watch, you barely find any content about mining. Like, for instance, you could have Hollywood movies having content, like 20% of it is always on digital creation. You could find 13% being health professional roles, architect roles, law enforcement, and lawyers. But then sometimes we do get into the picture, but not for a good reason. Like down here, you see this movie about Beneath. It's about how miners got trapped underground for a long period of time. Definitely not the career you want for yourself. Minecraft. I was really happy when our keynote speaker spoke about the Minecraft movie. It's really nice that they see how they could use the copper and the critical minerals to make the nice, impressive things, but then there was also a bad side of the movie. How many people have seen the Minecraft movie? No one. Oh, no. Well, the negative part of it is when, I think they have one farming community and then they have one mining community, and the mining community is getting increasingly aggressive and mining everything, and that was negative. But the nice one was where you have the farming community having a craft table and all of that. Then we have the next movie, Blood Diamonds, conflict minerals. Then gold, tricksters, or should I say fraudsters. Then the final one, They Buried, also another entrapment, or all forms of other movies. There's a host of them, it's a long lineup of them, but negative, mostly. Perception, what are we telling the Generation Z? What are we telling Gen Alpha? What are we telling Gen Beta? That's the question. Then it's about lifestyle. Would you consider remote locations and long-distance work? We have 23% of them valuing more remote work. Then there's this whole tough it out culture. Yeah, that's how we do mining. Like, deal with it. 29% get anxious, and all of these could lead to all forms of anxiety or mental health issues. We have rigid and long schedules. Look, doctors also have rigid and long schedules, but people still want to be doctors. So what are we doing wrong? Well, 6% of them value in-person roles as compared to having rigid. And then they like to be flexible, have a flexible schedule. You'd also want that too. It's not just a Gen Z thing. I think it's all of us, but you just don't admit it. And then adjusting to family dynamics. Like 11% of Gen Z want to start family early. They want to commit early. What are we doing to make those dreams happen? What are we doing to make their career and their lifestyle balance out? Then if you look at a typical mining or geoscience or mining industry career path, it's this whole big chart here. But then for those who go through the formal education system, through school, we just that blue box there. And then you find out that we have mostly 3 levels. We just go from level 1, which is like engineer 1 role, through engineer 2, and then become a senior, and then it keeps getting narrower, getting to the top. So how do we expect to keep all of these people in this role for the long term? I definitely went through grade school 1 through 12, and you remember that excitement you had anytime you went to the next level? You were stuck in engineer 1 between 3 to forever years. If no one gets off engineer 3, engineer 2, there's no room for you. You're stuck there. I don't want to be in that kind of profession. Then we talk about extension. Just as Zohreh earlier mentioned, there's AI that's booming. It didn't start now. It started gradually from the 1990s, all the way to now. It's been a gradual move, but now it's really big on AI and machine learning. Do I really have a job when the AI is just scanning the core and then, boom, the core is logged? Do I really stand a chance if I get into geoscience that I'm not replaced by AI or machine learning? We need to tell them the story of how we are making the person better by transforming these roles. Like a geologist can now become a geodata analyst. We don't just trust what the machines are telling us, we also have to apply some engineering judgment or geologist judgment and geologist imagination and all of that. We're telling them about how we've transformed the role for just being a common chemist to being a life cycle analyst, or how my planning is going an extra level to do more things with the data it's gathering, or how machine learning can look at creating designs and AI algorithms and all of those things. We need to make it exciting for them. But then also there's cause. We are all concerned, but then they are the future, don't forget. So the frequency of environmental degradation and climate disasters, some we can control, some we cannot, and some just have to happen. And then also the whole eco-anxiety issue is a big thing. It affects them or their future more than it affects yours. So you have to bear with them. So what did they decide to do? They decided to create an activist movement, from Fridays for Future to Climate Strike to Zero R, this is Zero R, various activist platforms to nip you in the bud, no more mining. But then the truth is they do need the mining materials, as you can see from the cell phone to everything else. But they are fighting against it because it's their future, and they have good reason for that. So do we have a workforce that is ready? I think for this entire section, everybody has spoken about enrollment and how it's declining and all of that. Well, if you take a good look at this chart here, you'd find out there was a huge decline between the 1990s and then 2010. That was a time where there was increasing environmental awareness. There were fluctuating production trends. There were high injuries and fatalities. There were growing concerns about conflict minerals. And all these four should scare you enough not to go into that kind of profession. Are we trying to translate that into now? Because as you could see from 2020, we are itching closely towards that gap. It's time for us to preach the gospel. If you do not go out to tell people what you do with your work and how you're impacting the world, how would they know? And we could also look at unconventional workforce. Like everybody's talking about the bridge between skilled and unskilled labor, and nobody's talking about special workforce. We are including AI and machine learning and the smarter ways of doing things. We could tap into resources with people with disabilities. They could do some remote jobs for us. They don't have to be on sites where they pose a risk in case there's an evacuation or anything. So when you delve deeper into the statistics for skilled and unskilled workforce, you'd see that there's a general decline, especially looking between 2010 and 2025. The 2025 data is not complete because it's only up till June. That's why you see the sharp decline there. But you can see that there's a more sharp decline in skilled workforce compared to unskilled workforce. And then for people with disability, the US Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that mining, quarrying, oil and gas extraction employs only 0.3 of people with disability. So now that means that if we drill down deeper, we have actually less for just mining. So that's an untapped resource, people we could bring into the game to make them purposeful. So we decided to look at how similar the various generations are in terms of organizational relationships, their work-life balance, professional ethics, communication, innovation and technology, and how easily the various generations adapt to it. And we thought, well, it looks like there's a really high correlation between Gen X and Y with Gen Z. Do you feel the same way? No? Okay. So we were torn. So digging deeper, we found out that Gen X is found to have better mentoring skills, because we need to identify which generation should be paired with Gen Z to have a more linear flow of knowledge. And it was inconclusive, because we think that depending on what sector or department you're trying to train a Gen Z on, if it has to do with technology, you definitely know you're not going to give the person to a silent generation. If it has to do with technology, you could focus on pairing him with Gen X or Y. If it has to do with communication, like, you find more similarities between the various generations, and that way we are itching towards like more progress with this generation. What more can we do? We need to reskill the people we currently have in the workforce. We cannot trade our need for Gen Z to join the train and leave the people we currently have aloof. We need to reskill them. And then we need to upskill whatever we are doing in our various little corners or offices to try and introduce this new generation into the workforce, to welcome them, make them feel at home, let them be creative enough to explore what's new they could bring into our industry. Now, we have to transform ourselves going forward. We need to implement educational outreach by prioritizing mining sites. I know there's a lot of programs that go around. You could talk about the Geoforce, which Leah spoke about. And then I could say my hometown is New Mexico, so I definitely had to bring them into it. We're also doing something where we train teachers, give them pieces of rocks or various minerals so that they could go and teach students about it. But what are the other states doing? They all have to provide something similar of trying to preach the good word about how mining, geology, geoscience is changing the future and how they can contribute to it. We could also go beyond the borders of formal education. When we are looking at the numbers, we always want to see people with university degrees or something like that. Not everybody likes the books, and that's fact. We need to look at those who do not want to go to school but like to hit the boots, like get on the ground, do some active work, understand the drill. And then also we have to support boot camps, the summer programs, and all of these things. Then finally, if they've been strong enough to go up on the internet and be activists against climate change and all of these issues, why can't we tell them to come up with a solution to reducing climate change and its effect on the environment? I think that's a more progressive way of getting Gen Z to work or to feel they're welcome in the mining industry. If they are creating change, if you're telling them how they could recycle materials or how to make good of the bad that has already been made, because it's already been made, I think that's more progressive. Then finally, we've got to create more lattice, and I know people are going to argue with me about that, but yes, if you've ever had an experience where you had a terrible leader, you know how much that is going to affect you. We need to understand that not everybody could lead. So we should have in our organizational structures a way to have a track for people who just simply want to do their job and people who want to lead change. But they can all grow. You could have two engineers, but one is on a leadership track and one is not on a leadership track. That way, we're making the industry better, not confining it to a bad leader. And we'd appreciate your feedback. We're still collecting responses from people in the Gen Z class who would want to answer a few questions. We still have to narrow our gaps on your generation. So please share this QR code up there or fill it if you are Gen Z. Thank you.